So, very good afternoon to you all. Welcome to JobGrade IAS. And as per my promise, मैंने आपको बोला था कि हम लोग मेंस 2025 से पहले आंसर राइटिंग को डिस्कस करेंगे। ठीक है, ये डिस्कशन हमारे वीक में 5 दिन होंगे, 4 दिन होंगे, डेली भी हो सकते हैं, बट इस डिस्कशन की कंसिस्टेंसी को हम बनाकर रखेंगे। बशर्ते मेरे सेशंस के बाद आपको ये बताना है कि आपको सेशंस कैसे लगे। ठीक है, आप कमेंट बॉक्स में बताएंगे कि सेशंस कैसे हैं और उसमें और क्या क्या हमें ऐड करने की ज़रूरत है। ठीक है, उसके लिए आप जॉब ग्रेड आईएएस को सब्सक्राइब करेंगे। ठीक है, ऐप को इंस्टॉल करेंगे जहां पर आपको यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स और मेंस के लिए एक्स्ट्रा कंटेंट भी आपको दिया जाएगा। ठीक है, you can join the paid batch of JobGrade IAS in which we provide handouts and personal mentorship after class. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पर हम आज एक सेशन डिस्कस कर रहे हैं मेंस आंसर राइटिंग। ऑब्वियसली आई टीच हिस्ट्री, सो माय सब्जेक्ट इज हिस्ट्री. आई विल गाइड यू फॉर द हिस्ट्री एंड आर्ट एंड कल्चर फॉर यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विसेज मेंस एग्जामिनेशन. इफ यू हैव सीन दी पेपर, अगर हम पेपर को देखें तो उसका जो मेंस का जो कट ऑफ है, मेंस का जो कट ऑफ है मेंस एग्जामिनेशन का, it was 739 marks in 2023 and it is 730 marks in 2024, which means UPSC is selecting the equal number of candidates for the interview at lower marks. What it signifies? It signifies that standards of UPSC are now more strict, right? अब वो जानना चाह रहे हैं कि आपकी आंसर राइटिंग को एक बहुत ही होलिस्टिक वे में आप किस तरीके से लेकर जा रहे हैं, आप क्या अपनी कॉपीज में लिख रहे हैं. ठीक है, तो whenever you go for traditional answer writing, तो ट्रेडिशनल आंसर राइटिंग हमें क्या कहती है? ट्रेडिशनल आंसर राइटिंग, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड पे देखते हैं. व्हाट ट्रेडिशनल आंसर राइटिंग? राइट, एंड व्हाट इज required answer? What is required answer? The demand of the traditional answer writing is very simple. Like any answer, first of all, you will have to write the introduction. Then you will have to write the body, the narration part, and third is conclusion. And this conclusion must satisfy the content that you have provided in the body of an answer. Clear? And required answer, what is the requirement of the UPSC? What is the demand of the question? What is the demand of the question as per the standards of the UPSC? You cannot write any answer. Yes, you follow the NCERT, you follow the textbook, but these are the guides for the UPSC, not the demand of the UPSC. So actual demand of UPSC is very clear that your answer, their requirement is very clear that your answer must have a right argument, which must be supported by valid facts. Is it clear? Now, what you write in an answer whenever you are studying for the UPSC examination or you're preparing for the state PCS, whenever you see any question, you just started finding out the facts. Let us suppose I have given you a question that what were the major causes of the revolt of 1857, and if this question, if I instruct you to write as per the UPSC pattern, you will get confused at the very first instance if you have not practiced well, because you will start finding the facts. Let us suppose there were certain economic reasons for the revolt of 1857. So your mind will instruct you to find more and more facts about the economic reasons. Next was religious reasons, political reasons. You will start gathering facts. And in this search, you will start compiling a lot of study material. You don't need to compile a lot of study material for good answer writing. Only one or two standard sources are enough. First of all, this is the first step to practice the answer writing for UPSC Civil Services as far as UPSC Civil Services Mains 2025 is concerned. Even those who are not practiced well, who have not polished their answer writing skills, can reach up to a certain level. I'm not saying you will reach up to the level of IAS, because answer writing is an art and it doesn't come overnight. You will have to practice and practice. Okay. So this is the required answer. You must have a right argument which must be supported by valid facts. So if you analyze the copies of UPSC toppers or any UPSC ranker, they follow this approach. They follow this approach. And when you will study the copy, the test copies of the toppers, you will realize what they have written. Very little facts, but a lot of arguments which are satisfying the demand of the question. Clear? Now, the question is, the team forgot to delete this. This is not NCRT chapter 2. You don't need to focus here. Okay. So this question was asked in UPSC Civil Services Mains Examination of 2024, last year only. The question is, why was the Great Revolt of 1857 confined only to North India, and how did it change the character of British rule in the subcontinent? Explain. And the word limit is 250 words. So as per the traditional approach, we will give the introduction, right? You don't need to title introduction in your mains answer writing copy. You cannot start your answer like introduction. Just give some small para with 3 to 4 lines and it will reflect the introductory theory of the answer. Clear? Don't go beyond 4 to 5 lines. This should be your introduction. This should be limit of your introduction. So what you will write in introduction? First of all, understand the question again. Why was the Great Revolt of 1857 confined only to North India? This is part 1. And how did it change the character of British rule in the subcontinent? So the demand of the question is very, very simple, very, very specific, and it is somehow out of the context, because you study the revolt of 1857 as a whole topic. You study about the causes of the revolt in a traditional manner. You study about the uprisings. You study about the conclusion, outcome of the revolt, what happened after the revolt, right? And this is the part 2 of the question, right? How did it change the character of British rule in India? Which means they are asking about the outcome of the revolt, the final outcome of the revolt, because British were ruling, East India Company was ruling, their authority was completely abolished by the British Crown, and British Crown assumed the total leadership of India, and India became a formal colony of Britain, right? I am more concerned about this part 1, why it was confined only to North India. So when you analyze, when you give the arguments, you will have many points. This part, especially this part, when you see this part 1 of the question, you need brainstorming here. You need brainstorming here. You know the facts that first revolt occurred by Mangal Pandey, who was a soldier of 34th Native Infantry of Bengal Regiment. Clear? And revolutionaries reached up to Delhi and declared Bahadur Shah Jafar as the leader of the revolt, who was not even known about the revolt, right? So does it satisfy the demand of this part, that it was why it was confined to North India? So when you study the revolt of 1857 in depth, you will realize one point, that educated class of South India, especially from South India, refrained themselves from this revolt. They had nothing to do with the revolt. They refrained themselves. This was one of the reasons, right? And there are many reasons. Let us find out these reasons. The first body is reasons for confinement in North India. What were the reasons? First of all, annexation policies affected the North India more. If you see the subsidiary alliance that was propounded by Lord Wellesley from 1798 to 1805, you must include the year. It improves your answer, right? These are the brutal facts, and this is the argument. This is the argument portion. Annexation policies affected the North India more, right? This is the argument, and these are the facts. Policies like subsidiary alliance by Lord Wellesley from 1798 to 1805 and doctrine of lapse. Doctrine of lapse was introduced by Lord Dalhousie from 1848 to 1856. Mostly impacted the princely states in North India. For example, Awadh, Jhansi and Satara. This should be your body. This should be the first point of the body of the answer. And what are the arguments? Argument number 1, and facts are here. So my message is to you that you don't need to explain the subsidiary alliance policy and the doctrine of lapse in your answer. Don't go for the explanation, because you will lose the word limit. You will exceed the word limit of 250. If you have the right argument and if you are giving the facts, it is a clear message to the examiner that you know about the answer. Clear? You know about the answer. So argument 1 is clear. Now what if you do not give the argument? If you do not give the argument, if you write this point directly, let us suppose I have bracketed this point, this argument, and this is absent. This is not in your answer, and you directly start your answer policies like subsidiary alliance and Lord Wellesley. This is a clear message to the examiner that you missed the explanation of these two policies, which is not required. But you do not give, you are not providing the right argument, is losing your marks, right? So next argument is sepoy concentration in Bengal army. You know very well, in Bengal army there were 3 presidencies under the British rule: Bengal presidency, Madras presidency and the presidency of Bombay, right? Most of the soldiers in Bengal presidency were recruited from Awadh, Jhansi, Western UP, right? These were the plain areas. These were the plain areas, the areas of North India. And allegedly there were some allegations on the British administration that they provided the brand new Royal Enfield rifles to the soldiers of the Bengal native infantry or all the presidencies which had cartridges of skin of cow and pigs. Cow and pigs. Earlier, British Army used the brown bass rifles, but Royal Enfield rifles were technically superior. They were lighter and they were better than brown bass rifles. The British were very pragmatic that you need to use this brand new rifle, but especially the soldier of Bengal army were not satisfied because this was hurting their religious sentiments, right? So what kind of argument you are trying to give? What kind of argument you are trying to give? Sepoy concentration in Bengal army, because this was known as the Sepoy mutiny, and not all the sepoys, not all the soldiers of British army revolted against the British, only the soldiers of Bengal army, right? So whenever you are studying the revolt of 1857, I am not teaching here you how to write an answer, I am teaching you how to build the answers. First of all, you build the answer, then you start writing. What is happening now between the gap of prelims and mains? People are relentlessly writing the answers. They are relentlessly sending their copies for evaluation, but they are not focusing on building the answer, right? So if I miss this point again, the Bengal army mainly recruited from North India, Awadh, Bihar, Western UP, was epicenter of discontent. And what was the reason? The reason was religious sentiments. Reason was religious sentiments. So with this para, with these 3-4 lines, can you imagine what kind of argument I am trying to give? The Sepoy concentration in Bengal army, right? Okay. Next point is Southern and Western India's different conditions. In South, earlier revolts like Poligar were the independent governors or the military leaders under the Nayaks who revolted against the British because of the issue of taxation from 1799 to 1805, very prior to the revolt of 1857, but they were brutally suppressed by the British army. Vellore mutiny occurred in 1806 and suppression of local rulers like Rani Chennamma. Rani Chennamma was a prominent leader, military leader, and the Queen of Kerala, right, who fought for the against the British to place his son on the throne, and this was the background of the policy of doctrine of lapse by Dalhousie, right. अब यहाँ पर what you need to do, Southern and Western India's different conditions. So demand of the question is why it was concentrated to North India. So you need to justify that there was something wrong in West India and the South India, right? What was wrong with South India, especially the Poligar rebellion, the Vellore mutiny, the revolt by Rani Chennamma. They were brutally suppressed. These people were, very tortured by the British people. They were afraid to revolt in future. They were very afraid to get revolt. Now, in South, the earlier revolts like Poligar rebellion, Vellore mutiny, and suppression of local rulers had already reduced opposition. There was no opposition because these people came to know about the power of British military that they didn't resist. Even when the revolt of 1857 was at its peak in 1857. Clear? Now, Bombay and Madras presidencies had more loyal troops and better British control. Why? Because most of the soldiers were the local areas. They were not from North India, who had their religious sentiments, and they had better British control. They had no issues with the cartridges of made of skin of pigs and cows. They were very comfortable with the brand new Royal Enfield rifles, right? So you need to justify it. You need to justify first of all what you did. You did here what was wrong with North India, because this was concentrated in North India only. What was wrong in North India? You explained here. You given the fact, right? Next was the Sepoy concentration of Bengal, because most of the soldiers in the Bengal army were the North Indians and their religious sentiments got hurt. This is the second argument, and facts are here. Now, what was wrong with South India? Facts are here, arguments are here, right? This is how you build the answer. That's why I'm saying answer writing is an art. It does not come to you overnight. You will have to practice, right? Next is by concentration of all army. Lack of communication and coordination. Lack of communication and coordination. With proper communication and coordination, and with the appointment of a strong central leadership, this revolt could have been extended to northern and southern India. But what we did, we just relied on our local leaders. Rani Lakshmibai was fighting from Jhansi, Begum Hazrat Mahal was fighting from Lucknow, right? Tatya Thakur Kushal Singh was fighting from Aua. Right? There were regional leaders. They declared Bahadur Shah Jafar as a leader of revolt, but he was the nominal leader, right? And this revolt was a backward looking revolt. This was the major reason, because people had loyalty in the old Mughal era, towards the old Mughal era, right? Hence they fought for the regional supremacy. And whenever there is a collapse, there is a collision between the regionalism and nationalism, nationalism wins. Our leaders were fighting for the supremacy in their own regions, right? Begum Hazrat Mahal, Rani Lakshmibai, Tantya Tope, and then you will find Thakur Kushal Singh, Maulvi Ahmadullah, right? These were the prominent leaders. So if you see absence of central leadership or communication across the regions prevented southern and eastern region from joining effectively. Neither southern region northeastern region joined themselves because there was no communication, right? Educated and privileged class, as I told you earlier, educated and privileged class, especially from South India, refrained themselves from the revolt. Still, you know, South Indian people, they are highly educated than their northern counterparts, and still here in South India, they were more educated. They were in the research work. They were doing literary works, right? They were aligned somewhere on the British lines. They were getting benefited with the British policies, especially under the presidency of Madras. So they refrained themselves from the revolt. So these were the major reasons why we lacked in communication and coordination, right? We didn't have any strong, leadership that could influence northern India as well as the southern India or western India or eastern India. Bahadur Shah Jafar was around 80 years old. He had no power, right? Even his commander, Bakht Khan, he led the revolt. Bahadur Shah Jafar was just a face, and he faced the consequences after the revolt. His sons were murdered in front of him, and he was exiled to Rangoon, which is now located in Myanmar, Burma. So, what changes occurred after the revolt of 1857? So generally what British says about the revolt of 1857, British always try to downplay the importance of the revolt. They always try to downplay the importance of the revolt in order to satisfy the British crown, because that time, before the end of 1857, of revolt of 1857, East India Company was ruling in India. East India Company was ruling in India, and they, even today British historians always try to downplay the importance of the revolt. Now what they are doing now, they are replacing the East India Company with a strong legislation of Government of India Act 1858, which took over, which took away the authority of East India Company. Clear? Now, they reorganized the army because most of the soldiers before the revolt of 1857 were Indians. Most of the soldiers were Indian, and they revolted. And this revolt was not just a normal revolt. British had to suffer from heavy losses. So now they will reorganize their army on the recommendation of Peel Commission. The British army was reconstituted with higher ratio of European soldiers on the recommendation of Peel Commission. This commission was constituted for the reorganization of the army, and there was another commission came into being, which is known as the Royal Commission, This one, British army inducted the regiments on the caste basis, like Jat regiment, Gurkha regiment, Sikh regiment, Rajputana rifle. There are many regiments which are existing even now, but now their role is completely different, right? If you are a Sikh, and if you are a Jat regiment, then you are a Jat. So I'm not talking about the concept of fraternity that is existing in the Indian army right now. We are discussing the question. So British tried to downplay the importance of this event, and along with the reconstitution, reorganized their army, right? First through the Peel Commission, and second one through the Royal Commission. Now, policy of non-interference in the religion. This was the major outcome, because especially the Brahmins and ulemas, who were the guardian of their original law, the Hindu law, which is written in Manusmriti, and ulema had the authority to over the Sharia, which is the Muslim law. And these laws were disturbed, interfered by the new British laws, which were enacted by the British, the respective presidencies. And that was the major revolt that these Brahmins and ulemas agitated. And even they became the mass leaders of the revolt of 1857. So now British took the decision that we will not interfere in the religious matters of especially the Indians, especially the Brahmin and ulemas, right? But they kept sending their missionaries for the religious conversion. That's a different point. You don't need to write. You will write this portion only. And new administrative policies, doctrine of lapse was introduced in order to ensure the loyalty of the kings. It was not introduced, actually it was abolished. It was abolished. So what was doctrine of lapse? You don't need to write here. You don't need to give the entire description of doctrine of lapse. It was abolished. Why? Because you are showing the softer side for the Indian princes, for the princely states. So now there is no doctrine of lapse, and now your stepsons can ascend the throne. Your stepsons can ascend the throne, and this was because most of the princely states favored the British against the revolutionaries of 1857. Right? When you speaking about Rajasthan, this revolt occurred, and most of the princely states of Rajasthan supported the British. And this was the reason British had to end this policy of doctrine of lapse. Clear? When you see especially the area of Bharatpur, when people Dholpur, especially Dholpur, when people revolted there, British called the army from Patiala, the Royal Army of Patiala, to suppress the revolt. And this was the level of loyalty of princely states for the British. So now, by abolishing the doctrine of lapse policy, they are trying to appease the princely states, so that they can get an evergreen loyal community for themselves. Now, enactment of Indian Council Act of 1861 ensure the Indian representation in the legislative process in British India and decentralizing the administration. The most of the Indians were agitated because of the centralized authority of British, especially most of the power were confined among the three presidencies: the Bengal presidency, the Bombay presidency, and the Madras presidency. Now, they are providing the system of indirect representation, and these were the nascent steps to the formation of the Indian Constitution. But this happened after the revolt of 1857. And one more point that you can add, it was the Arms Act of 1878. Arms Act of 1878. British knew very well the seriousness of the revolt of 1857. It was an armed rebellion, so they decided to disarm Indians with this Act of 1878, Arms Act of 1878. And this act could not be repealed even after the independence. This act was repealed in the year of 1959. So these were the changes after the revolt of 1857, right? So what is the conclusion? What is the conclusion here? Conclusion is that uh, thou British brutally surpassed the revolt of 1857, and it was occurring mainly in North India, but it impacted a lot to the British Empire, as we have seen the enactment of Arms Act of 1878, as we have seen the reorganization of British Army under Peel Commission and Royal Commission, as we have seen the end of company rule and the enactment of Government of India Act 1858. Hence, we can say even after confining in North India, it impacted British a lot. This is the conclusion, and mark my words, your conclusion must satisfy the body. If your conclusion in the answer is not satisfying the body, that means there is a problem in your answer. You need a recheck. So this was all about this question, which was asked in UPSC Mains 2024, and I'll bring up more questions on daily basis. We will discuss all. We will discuss the structure. We will brainstorm. We will learn to build the answer, be it world history, modern history, art and culture, post-Indian independence. For more such updates, kindly subscribe JobGrade IAS, install the app, and leave your comments. What kind of improvements we can make, especially in these answer writing sessions, because this time is very crucial, because UPSC Mains Civil Services 2025 is going to be commenced on 22nd of August 2025. So this time is very crucial for those who have cleared the prelims, right, who are scoring more than 85 marks, who are scoring more than 90 marks. This time is very crucial for them. So we will use this time smartly, right? We will try to build the answers, right? We will try to build the answer, and this was for all for this session. Thank you so much.